So, I want to introduce you to the topic of Boolean, which is truth and false within Python. True and false. These are the two keywords involved within Boolean statements within Python. Now, this is normally assigned to variables, as in a variable can be true or it can be false. Now, for an example, we covered for loops, right? Where we iterate through an index, which is either a range or a subset sequence. For example, if we were to do this for loop, we'd get this sort of output, but one by one in the terminal. On the other hand, if we were to do a while loop, it's while a variable is a certain condition, or is less than a certain condition, or is greater than a certain condition. Then do the following. This index can either be, for example, equal to a certain condition, it can be less than a certain condition, and it can also be greater than a certain condition. For example, we'll look at a while loop. We have a variable that's equal to 5. We have a while loop, which is while this variable is greater than 0, print the variable, and then variable minus equals 1. So every iteration takes one value of the variable. This would print values as such. But why not 0? Because while the variable is greater than 0, the variable is no longer greater than 0, that means the while loop stops. That's why it only prints 1. We'll move on to a Python code example now. Okay, so let's have a look at a in-code example of what this little animation just showed us. So for example, we'll start off with an almost identical while loop as the animation displayed. So we have a variable, and I'm going to call this variable, and we can set that to 10 or 5. We'll go with 5. I think the animation showed 5 if I can remember correctly. And now we can set up a while loop. So in Python that's just while, and now you set your variable and your condition. So our variable is called variable, but yours can have a different name. Previous ones we've used are x, I, and singular letters like that. Now while variable, and we're going to say while variable is greater than 0. So 0 is a condition and greater than is the operator. So while this variable is greater than 0, do the following. So the following we're going to do is to minus 1 off the variable. So how we're going to do this is we are first going to print the variable so we can see its status in every iteration through the while loop, and then we are going to do the deletion of a singular value from the variable. So you can do this either this way, where you do variable and now you're setting the variable to be equal to something else. So its new value, this new value is its current self minus 1, so that makes it take 1 off every iteration. Now that is the long way to do it within Python. Python allows you a short way of this, which is essentially just cutting out the second assigning part and doing it like this. So this just is short for variable is now equal to minus 1. So variable is equal to variable minus 1. So that works with Python, and this is not subjective to just minusing. This can be done with addition and most common operands within Python. So we're going to go with the minus 1 now. So this is basically it. We can run this now, and if you look to the right on the terminal, you can see the type of output we get with this. We should get 5 numbers. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. But then, you know, the variable isn't greater than 0 when it's 0, so it won't print out any more numbers than that 1. It won't go down any further than that because it doesn't stay true to the while loop when it is less than that 0. So let's run this and see what this does. Okay, my bad guys, it's actually a minus and then an equal, so just the other way around. If you ran it how we had it before, you would have just got a 5. But if you change it to the minus sign before the equal sign in this little calculation here, then you should get the intended output on the terminal, which is on the right now. So the 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. So that's our first mini while loop. So that's kind of indexing backwards. So it's minusing every time. Another type of thing with while loops that you might want to watch out for is they aren't an iteration range through a already set range of numbers like a for loop is. Our for loops would go from 1 to 10, for example, like the ones we did in the for loop video, or it could go through a list, but it would always stop at the last value of that range or list, where a while loop will keep iterating if the condition is still true or false, whichever one you're wanting it to stay true to. So say if we change this to an addition symbol and ran the same thing, it would run forever, which is called an infinite loop or sometimes a death loop. It can slow down a computer a lot. If this does happen to you, Control C on most terminals should just keyboard interrupt, kill the running program. I know it works in the VS Code, which is the IDE I do these tutorials in, and I should work within the Python 80 idle as well, but I'm not sure about Vim and other Linux key pre-built-in code editors like Vim and Atom and things like that. But if you're using VS Code, that Control C will do the trick to keyboard interrupt any def loop or while loop you accidentally leave running forever. I'm going to give you an example of one right now. If we look to the terminal to the right, this is kind of what will go down. So we run this, and as you can see, the numbers just keep going up and up and up and up, because it's always greater than 0 because we're adding. So I do the Control C, see, interrupts it, stops it. But yeah, while loops will run forever. They don't have a set start and end. You kind of have to give it a point to end in, give it a point to end at in the loop's conditions, or in the do the following part of the while loop. So this is where I'm going to show you how true and false or Boolean can be introduced into while loops, and how while loops are normally accompanied by Boolean statements is pretty commonly used together. So we can keep the same loop we have here. We can just write a Boolean. So we're just going to call it Boolean, and we can make it true. So it's true. It's set to true at the moment. So this Boolean is true. And then we have the same while loop. So we're going to change this to be subjected to the Boolean now. So if we get rid of all this, our variable is now going to be the Boolean. And now we're going to say, while Boolean equals true, do the following. So this loop is going to keep iterating through as long as this Boolean variable is true. Now within here, we can stop a def loop using this Boolean true or false now with saying if Boolean, or if variable, because variable is the variable that we are adding to. So this is the thing that's counting up and up and up. So now we can say when variable is a certain number, to set the Boolean to false, which would then kill the while loop, because while Boolean equals true will no longer be true, it will be false, so the while loop will end. I'm going to code that up now, and we can see how that works. So we're going to write if variable equals, let's say 100, and then we're going to go into this. So this is an if statement. If variable equals 100, then we're going to set the boolean to now be false. So if we run this, we should get the same def loop as before, but it will suddenly end at 100. So we run this, we look at the right to the terminal, and you can see how this goes down. So there you go, 99. So it doesn't print the exact 100 that it gets to, but 99 was the last one. It was the last number that the variable iteration addition got to before the while loop was no longer true, before the boolean was set to false. So that's how boolean and while loops are used together, and they're a great pair to use when you want something to continuously happen in case you don't want it to happen anymore. You can set really particular functions. This is different to a for loop, and I guess a lot of the times more efficient, because for loops are kind of like, yes, you can set specific functions, and or I shouldn't say functions, but specific conditions at each index, but they will only happen for a certain, from this point range to this point range, where while loop is doing it all the time in case a certain condition is met or a certain condition is changed, which, for example, our condition that changed here was our boolean variable going from a true to a false. Alright guys, that concludes the 6th video in our Python Basics series, which was on while loops. I know, I just want to apologize. I think in the previous video I said this was going to be functions, but while loops definitely should come before I cover functions. But not to worry, functions will be the next video in the series. So Python Basics 7 will be on functions. So I hope you can join me for that one. And without further ado, if you liked the video, tap that like button for me. If you didn't, tap the dislike button. And I hope to see you in the next one. Peace.